This week on the Reality Testing Podcast.
Autism is diagnosed through extensive neuropsychological testing. I'm talking hours of assessment.
Sometimes mental health issues create bad behaviors, but bad behaviors are not always because of mental health.
Trauma does not cause autism.
I am doing my best to try to figure out why I behave the way that I do. And I know that I have some trauma that has not been dealt with. I know that that probably has an impact, and I am trying to figure that out.
The way that you approach somebody who may have an issue is with empathy and concern and compassion.
We are two shrinks obsessed with reality TV. We are breaking down our favorite reality shows, the characters, and what psychology has to say about human behavior when it's being filmed. Pull up a seat and let's get started. This has been a little brainchild of ours for a long time, basically, because that's all we text about.
They are us, but in Fendi.
And we're like, oh my gosh, but also that's me. Just a quick reminder here, we are psychologists talking about mental health themes, but we are not diagnosing anyone in these episodes. This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered mental health advice. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please contact 988 if you're here in the US or seek local support wherever you are. You can access additional resources at realitytestingpod.com/resources. Welcome back to the Reality Testing Podcast. Boy, do we have a lot to cover today because we are going back into the archives and we are talking about the OG of the Real Housewives franchise with the Real Housewives of Orange County.
Yes, the original, what started this all. And this show was first, when it was pitched, was called Behind the Gates. They were trying to show viewers what it was like to live behind the gates in these gated communities in Southern California and the seemingly unattainable lifestyles of those people who are disconnected from the realities that we live. But one thing I think is important to note is that our very own Dr. Quincy walks amongst these women, lives with them, sees them.
Yes, and I will be sitting at a basketball practice for my stepson, and I will see one of them walking by, and I will sneak pictures and send them to Megan and be like, what was her name? She was on like season 5. Like, what? Remind me. So yes, it's very surreal to be watching the show too and be like, oh my gosh, that road is like very close to my house. Is that live? And then you're like Googling, like, where does Tamra Judge live?
Yeah.
Because it all feels a little familiar. Now, I could argue I lived in LA for a long time, and I could argue that the same thing could have happened with the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, but I just think I lived in a different part of the city, so I didn't have as much connection to what they were doing.
Yeah, totally. And LA is in a way like bigger. There's like more places.
Yeah.
Less over.
For sure.
But one of these days,
For
I'm
sure.
going to tell the story of how I ran into Kim Richards out and about in town.
Oh my God.
Put that
Put that in your back pocket
Yeah.
because we are going to talk about that. We actually need to do a whole episode on her because there is so much to talk about there.
Much.
So listeners, we will be back with a Kim Richards breakdown.
Yes.
Okay, so let's start strong with one of the most contentious, combative, defensive, and also endearing in some ways, a housewife, Tamra Judge. Go off, queen, because you have a lot to say about Tamra.
Yeah, and I have a lot to say about her on any given day anyways. But in the last couple weeks, she has gone on her podcast and said something that I just find totally salacious and out of left field and wrong, which is that she announced that she has autism or is on the autism spectrum. And when she said that, my immediate reaction was no, that's just wrong.
That's wrong, and there's no evidence that that's showing up in anything that she does on the show, and she says that she was diagnosed after having one session, which is Clinically totally inappropriate. So, listeners, if you are out there and you walk into an office and a clinician like diagnoses you without testing, without further clinical evaluation, without any sort of long-term conversation about how this has impacted your life, that you can't diagnose that way. That's not how this
No.
works.
No, autism is diagnosed through extensive neuropsychological testing. I'm talking hours of assessment. And, I see a lot of people online saying therapists don't diagnose autism. That's partially true because clinical psychologists are trained therapists, and ones with training in diagnosing autism can diagnose autism. And so there are therapists
Uh-huh.
out there who can diagnose it, but it's not done through talk therapy. We don't sit down with you
Right.
for an intake for therapy, which you are clearly pursuing because you've got some interpersonal problems and a shifty relationship with alcohol, and come away with an autism diagnosis. That's just not
Right.
how it works. And so the fact that she said that was invalidating to every person who actually has autism, misleading to the public about how autism diagnoses come about. And I think it's just another example of these people on Bravo who do really bad things, get bad reactions from viewers, and then wanna blame it on a mental health diagnosis, and that's
Which you and I will like, we will fight people on this because this is one of the things that we stand on as professionals is that sometimes mental health issues create bad behaviors, but bad behaviors are not always because of mental health, like, reasons. There are other reasons that people behave badly, and mental health should never be something that we're blaming that on because that does not show the true picture. And there are plenty of people with mental health issues that do not act like
Yep,
this.
that's right. That's right, and, I would never, ever diagnose somebody with autism, A, after one therapy session, or B, after watching them on a reality show, but
Right.
what I can say is that after watching her for I don't know how many seasons now, 10, 15, I have never seen anything that made me go, "Huh, I wonder if she has autism. She should get that checked out." Like, that's just
Yeah.
not on the differential diagnosis for
Yeah.
judge.
That of all the things that we could diagnose with, that was never that was never on the list of
No.
possibilities. She also attributes this to trauma. So Megan, please break down how inappropriate this is.
If you hear one thing in this episode, please hear this. Trauma does not cause autism. Autism is yeah,
Amen.
it doesn't. Autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning you are born with a different wiring in your brain. It is. There's no cure for it. That's just how the brain is wired. There's things you can do to adapt, to cope, to achieve higher levels of functioning, even though you have autism. But there's no treatment for it. It's not caused by trauma. It is simply how a person is born. Now, trauma can cause a lot of different reactions in people. It can cause what we know as PTSD. It can cause things like depression, anxiety, personality disorders, substance use
Yep.
disorders, which I think are a lot more common than we want to admit, that
Mhm.
have symptom presentations that may, in some ways, overlap with autism. And perhaps that's what Tamra is mistakenly getting at. Um, but no, trauma does not cause.
Yeah. It would have landed so much better with me if she had just come onto the podcast and said, I am doing my best to try to figure out why I behave the way that I
Yeah,
do. And I know that I have some trauma that has not been dealt with. I know that that probably has an impact. And I am trying to figure that out. Like that would have gone so much further
yeah,
for me than I have a neurodevelopmental issue that I am going to tearfully discuss on a podcast and try to get the sympathy of people when it was an inappropriate diagnosis to begin
yeah,
with. So she left me there. Like that was not, and this season, she is actually almost intolerable.
totally.
I appreciate that she is trying to be boundaried. Like I can hear that that's maybe part of the motivation for how she's behaving of like, I'm just not going to put up with this anymore. I'm not going to lie for other cast members. I'm going to tell people what's going on, like off camera.
Yeah.
But the way in which she is doing it is malicious and gross, and it is so hard to
It
watch.
is
It's so hard to
And
watch.
the way she comes for Shannon, and I have said before that Shannon is not my favorite. Shannon did some really terrible things this year in the off season that she needs to be held accountable for. And also the way that Tamra is coming for her and nitpicking her and calling her out is so cruel. And it is not how you treat
Mhm.
somebody with a problem, with a substance use disorder, with an issue. And the
Yeah,
ironic part is that Tamara drinks more than anybody. She is constantly seen belligerently drunk on the show and has the nerve to call out
yeah,
Shannon's drinking. I mean, you fell in a
yeah.
bush.
Y
Remember? Was she hiding in
yeah.
the bushes? I just have this, like, memory of her, like, in the bushes, drunk.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And, we even see on this season where she's like, staggering
Yeah,
out of Katie's house at that house party after she has like, yelled at Ryan for things. Like yes, she has an issue and it's hard to sort of watch her call out. But I do appreciate that Gina in this season, they're in London and Tamara has said something sideways again to Shannon and Gina sort of steps up. And Gina is one that has like taken a sobriety
uh-huh,
path. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But she says, I don't appreciate that you keep doing this.
right.
Like, stop bringing up the drinking as if you are holier than thou. She doesn't say it that
Yeah,
way, but she does. Like, that's the point that she's trying to make, which I deeply appreciated because it was getting bad.
it was, and I think in a lot of ways, Gina can be a voice of reason on this cast. I love the way that she is treating Shannon this season. Should we just go into
Mhm.
Gina? Should we talk about Gina?
Yeah,
Yeah, enough about
yeah.
Tamara.
Let's go.
Gina
Yes. So
is
tell me what you think about
this
Gina.
is the way that you approach somebody who may have an issue, is with empathy and concern and compassion. And Gina had every right to hang Shannon out to dry. I mean, after the comments she
Yeah,
made about her last season, and she doesn't.
yeah,
She's like, "Hey, I see you.
mm,
I've been there. I want to help." And I love that. I find her to be so endearing. I find her to be the most relatable, and also, I kinda
yeah,
hate that because she's not housewife material. She's not rich, she's not elite,
yeah,
but she's
yeah,
also very relatable, and I love
yeah.
Gina.
Gina has a history of sort of being very reasonable and it may be even too reasonable at times. Like in earlier seasons has like a very terrifying experience with her now ex-husband. And they have now like reconciled. They've now like, he's gotten the help he needs or whatever. But there was a domestically violent situation that played out. It was in the news. And you could tell that she was very terrified what happened. It was maybe out of character for him and was upsetting on all levels. But you see this woman, and I wouldn't suggest this for all like DV survivors, but you see this woman take her time figuring out what is the best thing to do for her family, for her children. She slowly starts the process of trying to understand this bad moment, and she makes her ex-husband, like, pay for that. She takes him to court, he's very apologetic the whole time, she has a victim impact statement, she holds him accountable in a way that allowed them to heal, and I feel like that is the energy that she brings to
Yep,
Shannon this season of, like, a lot has gone on, you have hurt me very much, but I can be reasonable enough to, like, start a conversation and try to make this better between the 2 of us.
right, and I love her for it. What
I love Gina.
what do you make of her situation with Travis?
Okay, Gina is gonna go down in my Hall of Fame because I think that she did one of the most badass things that she could have done, which is her current boyfriend has a bad relationship, a bad divorce going on with his soon to be ex-wife, and it was becoming toxic to her.
Yeah,
And she made the very difficult decision to say, I love you. I still want to be in this relationship, but it is no longer helpful for us to live together, for me to be like in this space 24/7. And she separates their family, which has lived together for the past, I don't know, 3 or 4 years.
mhm,
It is I think it's the bravest thing that we've ever seen anyone do on Real
Yeah,
Housewives.
and without throwing her boyfriend's ex-wife under the bus. Like, she could
No.
have, aired all that dirty laundry, and I think a lot of us wanna know, like, how bad could it be? And I think we know how bad it could be from some of our own personal
Yeah.
situations and people we've worked with. Um, but
Yeah.
she doesn't. She's like, "You just gotta trust me. It's not healthy, and
Yep.
this is what I'm doing." And I applaud her for that. That must have been so hard.
It must have been so hard, and you actually see these, like, emotional pulls that her boyfriend Travis has where he's like, "You didn't have to do this, like, I know you're sad, but you didn't have to do this," and, like, what a hard space to, like, stand in and say, like, "No, this is hard, and I have, like, an intense emotional reaction to it, and it's still the right thing to do. I still stand by it."
Right.
Ugh, I stand for
Me
Gina.
too.
She brave.
Yeah.
That is brave 101 right there.
I want her to have better style, but I love her.
Yeah, but in some ways, that's what makes her
Yes,
relatable, right?
totally. Ugh, I love her.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about Shannon, but let's just
Get
put
into
a
it.
bow on this Shannon thing. So Shannon has historically had like some of the most tumultuous interpersonal relationships on the show. So we start with her years ago with her marriage that is just it's like that toxic aunt and uncle that you see at Christmas that just bicker and they like I don't know, they're mean to each other and, like, there's no affection, there's no sweetness, there's nothing. You see that in her marriage, and then, of course, you find out that he's cheating, and then, of course, you find out that, like, everyone knew all this time, but they weren't saying it on camera. They have this divorce. It's an ugly divorce,
Very.
that they go back and forth with, court, and, like, what the payout's gonna be and what the child support's gonna be. It's ugly, and then she finds herself in what she characterizes is this, like, beautiful relationship
Mhm.
that is saving her from herself, with John Jansen, and then this season, we see the wheels have completely come off of it. They are broken up, and he's in a relationship with one of the old housewives that used to be on the show.
Who's so unlikable.
Uh,
And
she is
he's suing Shannon too because he gave her, I don't know, 40, 50, $60,000 or I don't remember how much he
75,
had,
something
yeah,
like that. Mhm.
for some plastic surgery, and she thought it was a gift, and he's saying it was a loan, and that's all getting worked out in the courts, and, oh, this is the messiness that we watch these shows for. But, yeah,
Yeah, it
er,
is. But you also see a fragility in Shannon that I don't think that we've seen
right, I
before.
think so.
Like, she starts the season, with, like, a lot of humility because she's had this DUI.
Yeah,
She has literally run her car into a home. She has lost her license for a while, right? Like, there's some ways in which she's trying to, like, I don't know, make that better and really look at herself. And then to be hit with this lawsuit and then to have to, like, hang out with and travel with her ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend, who also was a part of a previous lawsuit against you. It's like, "Oh, this woman cannot take
no.
much more." She does not have the emotional bandwidth to take much more. It is so
Yeah,
hard to
which
watch.
it is, and it's so interesting to me because I think of all the moments in Shannon's history where she has been so emotionally dysregulated, storming off, screaming at people, and remember that point where she was so I mean, I think they went a little overboard calling her psychotic and saying they were gonna 5150 her, like, that was not appropriate, but she was really not in a good way.
Yeah,
And now all of this is being pummeled at her, and she's handling it with such grace and class. I really think that
she
speaks
really
to
is.
how much she has grown and developed because
Yeah,
that's not the Shannon we've
yeah,
always known.
right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it also speaks to having 2 feet on the ground because she's sober.
100.
Right? Like, this everything else was sort of alcohol fueled, and now we see her tenderness, we see her vulnerability, we see that she does not have it all together, but she is coming at it with so much more, I don't know, wherewithal
Yeah,
because she's not drinking, and it's good to see.
yeah.
It honestly is.
I want her to stay sober because we see her, getting back into the drinking and trying to do the whole, "I can have
Yeah.
2," And I don't know where that's gonna lead. I
Yeah.
don't know what her sobriety journey is, but I think I like a sober Shannon.
Yeah, I do too. And she's still really fun,
Yes.
right? Which is always the thing. That's always the
Yes,
worry is like, will I be as much fun? Will I be able to participate in these things? And she's got a great sense of humor.
agreed.
She like loves to dress up and do silly
Yeah,
things and she can still do that, with sobriety in her back pocket.
yeah. I'm rooting for her. I came into the season wanting to hate her, but I'm rooting for
Yeah.
her. I am.
Yeah, I think we all are. What about Heather? You root for Heather?
No, absolutely not. I want her to walk out of the bathroom with tissue paper on her feet. Like, I
Yeah,
just need
I know.
something that is like to crack through that perfectionism that ugh,
Ah,
it doesn't sit well with me.
yeah. I love the way that she parents, especially
Yeah,
with queer
yeah,
children. I love the way that she supports unendingly, however, they identify. And that's about where my affection stops because there's not a human on the other side of it. There's just this, even when at the last reunion where Terry, her husband, had like a stroke and was like behaving belligerently and driving around the city, and she was chasing him in an Uber, like, trying to get control of the situation. The way that she reported that on the show was like she was reading it from a piece of
yeah,
paper, and she was like, "I have my breakdown scheduled for Monday," and I just wanted to scream, like, that's not what any of us
yeah.
want. Like, just be real, just be a human.
Clinically, we call that incongruent affect, where what the person is saying is not matching up with how they're presenting, and you're like, "Wow, that's a really horrific story, and there is no emotion behind it. I'm very curious
Yep.
about that." Or,
Yeah.
there's this really potentially relatable part of you, and you're just kind of, saying it like you're reading the evening news, and it
Mhm.
doesn't allow people to connect, which is what we want in a reality star. We wanna be able to connect, and we can't connect with
Yeah.
Heather. We can't.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, like, previous, seasons, and I think the only time we see her crack just a little is when her mom is being filmed.
Yes. Oh,
There's, like, a dinner that happens, and you can just see that her mom is driving her bananas, behaving in the ways that Heather behaves, which is the real irony,
yeah.
but I think that that's the only time that we see, like, a crack in the veneer.
Yeah, and I think we learned so much about how her personality structure formed by meeting her mother. It
Yeah.
made so much sense to me. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
this."
yeah, no one had any questions after that.
No.
What about Emily?
Oh,
Talk to me about
I
Emily.
love her. If there was a
Same.
housewife that I would sit down and have a beer with, it would be Emily. She is
Yeah.
smart. I love that she is an attorney. She is witty and
Mhm.
hilarious. I hated Shane for a while, and then I think I understood his humor, and now
Yeah,
I adore him. I think she's
yeah,
so relatable. She's had some, struggles with her own mother and their
yeah,
relationship. She had some fertility struggles that a lot of us can relate to.
yep,
She has had some weight struggles and she's on a weight loss journey. There's just so much about her that is so relatable. But then she's also like filthy rich and, does all of these kind of
yeah.
things that we love about a housewife as well.
Yeah, she had a moment, when they were in London on this last, season where, Shannon storms out and restaurant staff is bringing
Yes.
out a cake, and you see the cameras, like, pan towards Emily, and she's like, "She's outside, should we take it to her
Yeah.
outside? Y'all go chase her down," and that was, like, her personality to
I
a
love
T.
it.
That was the
I
scene.
laugh.
If you wanted to, like, understand how she works in the world, that is it.
Yeah.
It was, like, such an Emily moment, and I loved it.
Totally, and she doesn't always get it right. She gets too drunk
Right.
sometimes. She puts her foot in her mouth. She says the wrong thing. She's on the wrong side of arguments, but
Yeah.
she's like, "Yeah, I got that one wrong," or "I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Now I know this," or "Oops, I'm not gonna drink that much next time." And she's just who she is, and I love that. She's full ownership.
She is I'm thinking of, this last season when they are at, like this spa,
Oh,
and the woman is like trying to give them like relaxing scents. And she is like, "What scent really makes you relax?" And Emily, completely real. She does not, this is not hubris. She says, "I really love the smell of
yeah.
tacos." Just be like the meat and the cheese, tacos. That's the scent that I really love. And I like that's
Yeah.
Emily. That's her moment. That's her personality. I love it so much.
And then she whips the turkey sandwich out of her purse.
And honestly, maybe we should all have turkey sandwiches in our
Yeah,
purse for those hangry
yeah,
moments.
emotional
I'm here
support
for it.
turkey sandwich. Love her.
So last season, we saw a new character come in, and then we kind of see her develop
Yeah.
this year, which is Jen. Tell me about Jen.
Oh, she's doing that second season thing that I love, where, you get introduced to them
Mhm.
first season, and then, like you said, they develop the second season.
Uh-huh.
I did not like her last season. I thought she was just another blonde gal with too much plastic surgery in the OC. But this season, I am appreciating her so much. I think she is so honest. She has a lot of
Uh-huh.
tragedy in her story, but she's very,
Yeah.
very honest about it. And the whole stuff with the gambling scheme and her
Yeah.
partner is it's captivating to me because I so desperately want her out of that relationship, and I so understand why she specifically stays there.
Yeah. So I think that like the arc of her story is that she's been cared for her entire life. Then she gets into a marriage where she does not feel emotional connection. She doesn't feel like he's interested in her at all, but he takes care of her financially. And we know that her family has a lot of money. So that's like a seam, right?
Yeah,
And then the season opens with her storyline is we are being evicted from this home because my ex-husband stopped paying his part of the rent and I can't pay. And I wouldn't even know how to pay rent because I have never paid a bill in my life. And so you kind of see this like helplessness that I think is worth talking about. And I think it's like there's this idea out there in the world that we all should be financial feminist, meaning that women should know how to deal with money. They should know how to take care of themselves. They should have access to the ability to make money because that is true freedom. That means you can get out of unfulfilling relationships. It means that you can pay your bills if the other partner decides to stop paying. It means you do know how to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out when you're in a pinch. But this is not what happens to Jen. Jen goes from being taken care of by her parents, then taken care of by her ex husband, and then immediately moving into her current boyfriend's house and being financially cared for by him. There's just something really painful about that.
yeah. She's so vulnerable. She's so vulnerable because she doesn't know how to take care of herself.
Yeah. And then at the end of the season, we see that her boyfriend, who's now stepped in to financially take care of her, is a part of this FBI investigation because his best friend is a bookie. And according to sources online like people.com, there is this alleged gambling scheme that's been going on. Now, he has never been indicted and he's been given full immunity. So I don't know if he's working with them or
Yeah,
whatever. But at the last party of the season, we see that the cameras catch Ryan joking with all of the men, with all of the husbands about rumors that he's under investigation, and he literally says, "This is," or someone else at the party says, "This is my money launderer." They say that to Ryan.
uh-huh.
Ryan laughs at that and then later says to Terry, another one of the husbands, that he, quote, "might go to jail if he doesn't, quote, rat on his friends." Like, this
Pretty
Jen is not free. She is not free. Now she's tangled with another guy who has to pay all of her bills, who is now involved in something else. What options does this woman have
she
if she keeps moving from man to man like this?
right. She has no options, and I think that's why we all watch this and go, "Oh my gosh, separate yourself from this train wreck," but she literally cannot, and so she has to choose to turn a blind eye to it, to play dumb, like she doesn't see this
Yeah.
happening because she doesn't have any options.
Now, I do know that she got, like, quite a settlement from her divorce, but I think that that happened after we saw all of this, like, on film and then air, and so in between, like, when cameras went down, I think her divorce was final. I saw some, like, big numbers that she got, um, but I don't know what that means for her. If she doesn't know how to manage her money, if she doesn't know how to, like, pay a bill, then how does she take that money and actually do something with it?
If you are a financial advisor and you are wanting to do some pro bono work, please contact Jen. She could use
Hmm.
your services.
Yeah. Yeah, she could use some real
Hmm.
advice there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when she's ready to deal with her trauma, we are here to help.
Yes, there's a lot there. Okay, lastly, let's talk about the newcomer this season, which is Katie. What do we think about Katie?
I really like her. I love that
I
she's
do too.
coming for Heather, but because we know how I feel about Heather. But when she did, I was like, "Oh, honey, you can get eaten alive because Heather takes no
Yeah.
prisoners." So I'm worried about her, but I like her,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping she gets a second season. What do you think?
Me too. I thought she was refreshing. I liked her. I liked how she like talked about things. I like her thought process. Like I kind of like all of these things. But the season does end with a few people being upset with her and calling her a liar.
Huh?
Like we've got like two of my favorites, Gina and Emily, that are both like, she's not reporting what actually happened here. And so now it's got my antennas up. I don't
Me too.
know quite what to make of that.
Me too. I don't know who I believe here. I
Mhm.
think this could be a situation where two people experience something and remember it very differently, and no one's necessarily lying per se. But I am
Right.
disturbed by the situation with her daughter babysitting Gina's kids and them reporting.
Emily's kids.
Yes, Emily's kids, excuse me. And Emily's
Yeah.
kids saying, "Oh, Heather's, mean to our mom," and who really did the daughter plant that? Or how that,
Yeah.
how is this getting reported? There's a lot of telephone
Yeah.
going on here. I don't know who actually said what. But I've got a lot of questions, and I just don't like the kids getting involved in the storylines. Leave
Me
them out of
neither.
it.
That was honestly the first time that I felt like Katie was, like, potentially messy,
Yeah,
and I don't like that.
yeah,
That was that was not cute, but I liked her overall. The whole season, she had me,
yep,
and then that last episode where, like, this kinda comes out or the last 2 episodes when this comes out, I was like, "Ugh,
mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if I like it."
Yeah, so maybe she'll get a second season, and we'll see what we really think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's time for some reality testing. Who needs a dose of reality on the Real Housewives of Orange County?
Tamra, she needs to understand that she is not needed on this show. This show would survive without her. She doesn't need to be driving storylines in the way that she is, and we have
Yeah.
no sympathy for her bad behavior.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm gonna nominate Heather
Yeah,
because again, I just want her to be more real. I want the Heather that is sitting at the dinner table with her mother and is having an emotional reaction to that. Like
yeah,
I want what is really going on there.
yep. Same, same. Be real. Okay, the intake. Who do you have first impressions about?
Jen,
Yeah,
I mean, I think that I kind of felt like I had a new version of
yeah,
Jen this season, and so I got to have, like, new first impressions of her. But my first impression is how tangled up she is in this relationship with Ryan, and, like, now there's, like, legal implications for that, and it really kinda has me scratching my head, so I'm gonna need to sit on that and maybe see more. I'm really anxious for the reunion, which hasn't aired
yes.
yet as of this
As of
recording.
us sitting down to talk about this, the reunion has not recorded, but I am or has
Yeah,
not aired, and I am so here for it. Yeah,
yeah. What about you?
my intake is for Alexis, which is interesting.
Yeah,
She's an old one coming back to us, and
yeah,
she's just worse than I remember. I mean, there's a reason she's not a housewife anymore, and her
yeah.
coming back, I'm like, "Ooh." Her saying, "There's the door, Shannon Bedore," just it was such a miss. She is such a miss.
Yeah, and she, is not a girl's
No.
girl, and I think that that's what bothers me. Like, on these housewives, we want to see sort of like the female camaraderie
Yeah.
eventually come around, and she goes hard in the paint for this man who is sort of cringy and has a long history with another one of the housewives, but she defends him to the death. And but she, like, met him 2 months ago,
Yeah,
like, before this season started filming, so I don't know, she just missed me with that for
totally,
sure.
totally. It's gross.
Okay, who are you dying to discuss?
Well, if we're going to talk about the OC, I can't believe we haven't talked about the OG of the OC, which is Vicky Gunvalson. So
That's
much
right.
to discuss here, but I specifically would like to do a very deep dive into her and Brooks and the cancer scam because I think there is so much psychologically that went on there. And I think we need to pick it apart.
Let's do it. We're gonna do a whole case
Yes,
review. How about that?
yes, I love it. What are you going to discuss?
I think Tamra, I think this like new diagnosis, like if you're going to get diagnosed with that something and you're going to stand by that and you're going to say that this is the reason for my behavior, although I disagree, I want to see some changes because now you have an answer, apparently, to why you've been behaving the way that you behave. And so if you have this answer, then I expect some changes. So I'm dying to see how that plays out and if we'll see that. I'm actually dying to see if she even comes
Yeah,
back next season because she did not land well, I don't
with
think,
anybody,
with
with
people.
anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think she
Yeah.
will, but if she does, we will discuss.
So you had a TikTok go viral on Tamra. So tell people where they can
Sure
find
did.
you to go and see that viral TikTok.
I posted a TikTok for the first time in months over at Dr. Megan Johnson on TikTok and Instagram. Instagram didn't love it so much, but TikTok it took off, and then people started tagging Andy and Tamara, and I was like, "Ooh, let's go. This was for entertainment purposes. I don't want them in this conversation, but you can go."
Or maybe we do. Maybe we want Tamra on the
Yeah,
pod. Like, come defend thyself.
this is your open invitation, Tamara, to come on
Yeah.
to
You're welcome to come. Yeah. Okay. And if you are interested in what I show up and say online, I am at Dr. Quincy on Instagram and sometimes TikTok. And we will see you guys next week.
Yeah, bye.
If you are a reality TV junkie like us and you have an idea of something you'd like for us to cover on this pod, you can email us at realitytestingpod@gmail.com. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform so that others can find us. We had so much fun with you today. We'll see you next time. Okay, love you. Bye.